Hello, everyone. Welcome to String and Story. My name is HollyAnne, and it's my job to guide you to quilt and to live with confidence. Thank you so much for being here with me this evening, and thank you guys for your flexibility today. Our internet is actually still out, but we have a couple of really gracious neighbors who have allowed us to log into their internet so that we can be working, and hopefully mine will get fixed tomorrow. So anyway, thank you so much for your patience and your flexibility today, as normally this live happens on Tuesday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern, and instead we are here at 7, which is just all kinds of funky business. So guys, welcome back to Summer Stash Busting. This is week 4, and we have progressed to 10-inch squares, and today we are going to be talking about double Colorado. Now, before I get into that, first of all, if you are here with me, can you please say hello in the comments? I would love to see you. And let me see. Let me make sure that I can hopefully see you guys. But let's see. Kathy's here. Jenny's here. Oh, good. That means I'm broadcasting successfully. That feels like a huge win right now, honestly. The internet has been, honestly, it's been a mess since we got back from Yellowstone. Sue, Jennifer, Kathy, yay. Hey, Lisa. Oh, how fun. How fun. How fun. Oh, there's so many of you here. How delightful. All right, let me get this pinned to the top so it'll be easier for you guys to find. Hello, Mary. Hey, Laura. Hey, Patricia, Katie, Susie, Cindy, Lori. Oh my gosh, you guys are logging in so fast. How completely delightful. See me, and I can see you. Oh, heaven. Talk about 10-inch squares. I have a shameless plug for you guys. I am so excited. I am offering my first open workshop since April, May. It's been a hot minute since we have done a workshop together. And guys, right now registration is open for my first intro to thread painting workshop. Now, if you guys remember just a couple of weeks ago, I did some free motion quilting and thread painting on 2 panels, a Yellowstone panel and a Grand Tetons panel. And I got a lot of questions about both of them. And so I'm really excited to create this workshop to share with you guys the techniques that I used in order to have success with these panels. Now, you don't need to have these panels in order to enjoy the thread painting workshop. I'm going to teach you some basics of taking intro to free motion quilting skills and some understanding of thread and color to create some really gorgeous finished pieces that will translate beyond the Yellowstone panel, the Grand Teton panel, or even the Great Smoky Mountains National Park panel that I'm going to be using to teach on for you guys and give you kind of this first introduction. I'm calling it thread painting light. Right? It's a little bit of free motion quilting, a little bit of thread painting, and putting those things together to create some really gorgeous wall hangings. All right. So if you are excited about that workshop, some of you guys have already jumped in. I am so excited about this workshop. It is a week from tomorrow. There will be a replay available, and all the details are available via the link in the caption of this video, which is stringandstory.com/shop. Registration is open through Saturday night, and I hope I'll see you guys there. Now, some of you guys are going, HollyAnne, this workshop is more expensive than your previous workshops. Previous workshops were $27, and this workshop is $35. The reason for that is because this workshop is going to be at least 3 hours long. So previous workshops have been only 2 hours. My goal for this coming workshop is we're going to be working on my Juki, which is here, even though you guys can't see it. We're going to be working on my domestic machine, and my goal is to take you guys as far through the quilting of my Smoky Mountains National Park panel as possible. So I'm going to have it basted and ready to go. We're going to talk about choosing thread colors. We're going to talk about changing thread colors. We're going to talk about burying ends. We're going to talk about choosing free motion quilting motifs. We're going to talk about when you should not use like a motif, but just focus on texture. And I want to take you guys as far through that process as possible. So like I said, it's going to be live. We're going to use Zoom webinar, but there also will be a replay available if you aren't able to join us live. Okay. So shameless plug. I'm super, super, super excited about that workshop. If you are in the Guild, Sue, thank you so much for asking this question. So if you're not familiar, the Guild is my membership for folks who are in or have graduated from Free Motion Quilting Academy. So it's my intermediate and advanced membership. If you are a member of the Guild, yes, and Jennifer, I'm going to count on you to remind me for water and stretching that it's okay for us to take a little break. But if you are a member of the guild, you do not need to register. I will make sure you get the information. I'll be posting it in the Facebook group and I'll be sending it out via email. So members of the guild, this is part of your membership. If you are not a member of the guild, then you need to register and pay separately. Okay, perfect. I'm so excited that you asked that question, Sue. Thank you so much. Carol, I'm so glad that you're able to join me live. I see so many of you here. Oh my gosh, Lori, I made squash casserole tonight and it tasted like my grandma's. And I might have cried. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. So guys, without further ado, let's jump into Double Colorado. Let's continue summer stash busting. You will find the links for today's blog post as well as pretty pre-cuts. And I'm going to mention a freebie at the end. You're going to find all those links in the caption of this video and at the blog post. So you can go to stringandstory.com/blog, but there's also a direct link to the Double Colorado review in the caption of this video. All right, so Double Colorado, here we go. This is our 10-inch square pattern for our pretty pre-cuts summer stash busting extravaganza. Guys, I'm honestly in pure shock that we are on week 4 and I've made 4 quilt tops in 4 weeks. And I've actually done other projects as well. But that sewing mojo that I seem to have misplaced back in the winter, it's like I was saving up for summer stash busting. So here we go. Oh, I got to go over to this tab for this to work. Sorry, guys. In this mini workshop, we're going to take a look at the modern traditional double Colorado quilt pattern and discuss how this relatively simple quilt can shine when you put the right quilting plan on it, okay? So Double Colorado is written by Rebecca Cottongim. It's a great quilt for 10-inch squares, and Rebecca's use of a 4 at a time half square triangle method makes this traditional looking quilt come together surprisingly quickly. Now, you guys will see here, I'm going to talk about this more in a minute. I did not make a quilt top. I made a table runner this week. I completely fell in love with Stellar by Rashida Coleman Hale, and I got my hands on a mini layer cake and turned that into a table runner. I'll talk about that adaptation in a little bit of a minute here, but let's continue on with this pattern review, all right? So you can get this pattern inside Make Modern Special Edition called Pretty Pre-Cuts that we've been working through for all of summer stash busting. So if you're new to summer stash busting and you go to stringandstory.com/blog, scroll back just a hot bit and you will find the original kind of introductory Pretty Pre-Cuts post. You'll be able to see the patterns that we've done so far for 2.5-inch squares, 2.5-inch strips, 5-inch squares, and now 10-inch squares. All of the patterns we've been doing are in this one issue of Make Modern. So it is like the ultimate bang for your buck, right? To get this zine, if you will. It's a web magazine, so it's a digital magazine. But when you get your copy, you get all these patterns, which has been so much fun. Now, bit.ly/mm Pretty Pre-Cuts, full disclosure, that is an affiliate link. And thank you, by the way, for all of you who've been purchasing Pretty Pre-Cuts through my link. That's an awesome way for you guys to support what I'm doing with summer stash busting, and I really appreciate that. All right, pro tip, as we're going along, use screenshots of the images from Pretty Pre-Cuts to plan your quilting design. Now, this is the first time that the cover image of the quilt that we've been making is not a flat shot, but there is a flat shot inside the pattern itself, and I simply took a screenshot and printed that out when I was making these quilting plans. The image was a little bit blurry because I had to enlarge it, but it worked quite well, as you'll see as we're going along. All right, now this pattern, guys, as you can see here, I made 5 blocks and I put them end to end and I turned this into a table runner. Oh, hang on, I'm seeing some comments coming in. Let me just double check, make sure I didn't miss anything. Yes, so Terry, if you are a member, then you need to email me. So email me at stringandstory@gmail.com and we'll get it sorted, okay? So this was a super fun pattern. So like all of the patterns that we've done so far for summer stash busting, I've been pleasantly surprised how much I enjoyed the piecing process. I shared with you guys a couple of weeks ago, before summer stash busting, it had been a hot minute since I'd followed somebody else's pattern, right? And so it's been a lot of fun to have the practice doing that and to find that it's been really enjoyable. I will say Double Colorado is the pattern I was most nervous about because it is a more traditional, modern traditional design, right? These blocks are not, or the units, the half square triangles are not super big, and I was worried it would be fiddly. Now, if you follow the pattern in its full extent, it makes a big quilt. It's like 90 by 88 or something. That's like a double pushing a queen, to give you a point of reference. So I did not, as you see, I did not make the full pattern. I just made a section of the pattern. Part of that was because of the fabric that I had on hand, what I wanted to bust in my stash, if you will. But also because I don't need another double-sized quilt right now. That's just not high on my list of needs, and I wanted to have something complete for you guys. And when I fell in love with this fabric, I was like, this will make such a gorgeous table runner for our dining room. So I mentioned, this will come up again in a minute, but because I already made reference to it, I mentioned I used a mini layer cake of Stellar by Rashida Coleman Hale. Absolutely gorgeous line. Guys, photos will never do this line justice. It has gold accents in it. Rashida's artwork is absolutely stunning. When I unrolled it to make this, I just was like, oh my gosh, it's even more beautiful than I expected it to be. I don't remember exactly how many squares were in there. I know I had 3 left over, and I used the yellows and the navies for my colors, and I used the pinks and the creams for my background. So if you want to try out this pattern, but you don't necessarily want to make a double bed size quilt, take a mini layer cake or take a layer cake and divide it into lights and darks and pair them up that way to make your half square triangles. And it's an easy way to kind of trim this pattern down and make something smaller. Also, each individual block of that kind of pointy S shape is perfect for a placemat. So if you've got kind of a weird number of 10-inch squares on hand, then you could make individual placemats out of individual blocks, and that would look really cool too. And I actually seriously considered that with mine. The only thing that stopped me is I had 5 blocks, and there are 6 seats at our dining room table. So I couldn't quite make a placemat for every seat. Otherwise, I think I probably would have gone that route. I think it would look really, really neat. So just know that if you're like, I'm participating in summer stash busting, I want to try out this pattern, but I'm not sure I want a double size quilt, there are some cool ways that you can pare this down, okay? So let's talk about quilting plans. Yay, I'm so glad you're here, Violet. Let's talk about quilting plans for this quilt. Now, the things I'm going to have primarily drawn out are for a quilt, whether it's a throw or a bed-size quilt rather than a table runner, but you could adapt all of these to be more table runner or placemat friendly if you decide to kind of go the route that I went, okay? So first up, this is a stitch in the ditch plus fill. So pretty consistently with my quilting plans on this, I felt like leaving that kind of angular S unquilted as much as possible looked really cool. I just think it's a cool shape to have in your quilt. But I would encourage some stitching in the ditch around those blocks to make sure it's secure, because it's a fairly large block by the time you get those half square triangles put together. And then you could do a simple fill, like here I used a meander. You could use whatever your favorite fill design is, right? Paisleys, pebbles, swirls, wood grain, switchbacks, like you name it. Pick a fill for your background and go to town. Now, if you look really closely at this image, you'll be able to see that I started drawing some continuous curves in the colors and decided I wasn't sure about how that looked. So I didn't draw it all the way down, but that's something you may want to play around with. If you're like, that feels like a really large area to leave unquilted, but I'm not sure if I want to stitch in the ditch anymore, then it could be an option to add some continuous curves into that angular S shape in order to secure things a little bit more, okay? So next up, I did a pattern that's a little bit more specific to a table runner. So actually turning the quilt pattern on its side to imitate the way that my blocks are stitched together vertically to make this table runner. And this is a simple stitch in the ditch and then doing 1/4 of an inch echo on the inside of that angular S just to secure it down a little bit more with paisleys as the fill in the background. Right, so this would work up fairly quickly. It's not a lot of background fill space, but it would add some cool texture to a table runner draped across my table. I don't know if this is actually the plan that I'll execute, but it's one that I wanted to at least play around on paper and mention to you guys. All right, hello, y'all. I see you still hopping on. How fun. Now, next up, what if we add some texture? So still really respecting the seam lines of that angular S, but doing something a little bit more intricate in the background, right? So here, again, stitching in the ditch to secure your shapes, but then doing 2 different feathers in diamonds shapes in the background. Now here I drew just simply traditional bump back feathers, right? This is a modern traditional quilting design, and why not just keep it simple, keep it classic, really kind of play that up. right? But it would be really cool as well for you to play with the type of feather that you're stitching. Maybe do bump back feathers in those fatter diamonds, but put peacock plumes or ginkgo feathers in those more elongated diamonds, right? So it's a neat opportunity to practice your feathers in shapes. For those of you who are in Free Motion Quilting Academy with me, you know that we have a whole section on let's take a feather and stick it in a shape, and that's a cool effect in its own right, right? So here's a really neat quilt for using. Ouch. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so sorry. I cut my foot yesterday. I just bumped it on the side of my sewing table and saw stars. Okay, this is a really neat opportunity to really get to practice those feathers in a shape in a practical setting, even down to the fact that you have half diamonds and quarter diamonds along the edge, which is, I think, is really neat. Now, some of you may be asking, kind of in your head or, you know, to your neighbor, or I don't see it in the comments yet, but these are borders that are shown here on these diagrams. I did not draw quilting plans in the borders because frankly, it wouldn't have shown up well because this was not a very big diagram that I was working on. I do make a note in the blog post though that using something like wishbones or ribbon candy in the skinny border and switchbacks or feathers in the wide border would be good choices, just to give you guys some ideas if you choose to put a border on this quilt, okay? Finally, why not just take that traditional aesthetic all the way, right? And use feathers all over this quilt. So what I did here is I drew out stitching in the ditch between rows to make sure everything is nice and secure. That also secures your quilt nicely before you do any free motion on it from your basting, right? So as you're squishing and scrunching through your domestic, you don't have to worry about the quilt shifting. And as you've got your walking foot on to do that stitch in the ditch, also do a gentle wavy line down the center of each row. You could do this down the center of each column if you wanted to. I just felt like the rows visually lent itself a little bit more to this, to creating these wavy lines down the quilt. And then stitching bump back feathers in alternating directions. So right on the first row, I started on the left, the second row, I started on the right, and alternated down. So we've just got a lot of wave action happening across this quilt. If you find that stitching feathers this big on your domestic is a challenge, then you could quilt the feathers as big as you can, and then go back in between the feathers and add something like paisleys or pebbles or little swirls to kind of, or even a meander to kind of fill in the gaps, okay? Right, look at all the feathers on this, Sue. The more I looked at this quilt, the more I saw feathers, to be perfectly honest. So I recognize that this is a feather heavy suggested quilt plan opportunity, but something about the kind of modern traditional nature of this, I was like, what if we really went for that, where the piecing has been modernized a little bit, but why not put that traditional element back on it. Now keep in mind here that I've drawn all this with black pens so that you can see it when you're looking at this quilting plan, but I would probably pick something like a gray if I were actually making a quilt with these colors and stitching these feathers. On mine, I'd probably pick like a yellow or a cream, so the feathers would not show up and feel quite as dominant as they do on this quilting plan. It would just be a heck ton of texture, right? All right. So as I mentioned already a couple of times, a note about my rebellious ways. I used a junior layer cake of Stellar by Rashida Coleman Hale to create 5 blocks for a stunning table runner. Guys, I'm ridiculously excited about this table runner. I've been working on our dining room a little bit over quarantine. I can't wait to paint it. I hope that happens soon. I actually bought myself a lovely little basket of succulents to put on the dining room table last week, and Moby proceeded to eat them like a lot. So that's now out on the porch to recover from the cat, but at least I've got a table runner in process that will bring a little bit of color and spice to this room, right? By the way, if you are also interested in this layer cake, I've got an affiliate link over to Fat Quarter Shop embedded in the blog post. So if you're like, where can I get this layer cake? Where can I get Stellar by Rashida Coleman Hale? Where can I look at this fabric line more closely? I've got a link for you in the blog post, okay? Guys, did I mention how beautiful this line is? Let me see if I have. Hold on. Let me grab really quick. I've got just a couple of the squares left. So here's one of the prints. This is like shameless plug because I was so in love. But look at these like moon and stars. And let me see if I have any of the smiles. Oh, I don't. So then there was a stripe as well. These were the few that I didn't use. And this kind of globe. And then what I don't have, oh, it's right here. Let me just grab hold on, we had a bug. Got a bug in my fabric. That is not going to do. Okay, got it. And then I just have to show you guys these little faces. It's been a while since I like fell in love with fabric this hard. But then there's these gorgeous little sun faces in navy and yellow and pink. So anyway, if you are also in love with this fabric line that I just had to shamelessly plug, then there's a link over in the blog post. So yeah, Marie, I think Moby's just stubborn and is going to eat anything I put on. I just don't think I get to have indoor plants, unfortunately. Moby was like digging them out of the pot. Like he's just kind of a turd when it comes to plants, to be perfectly honest. Anyway, so I wanted to let you guys know about that fabric and about this adaptation that I made. And what's really cool is you could have just a layer cake or a junior layer cake on hand and still try out this block without having to make a bed-size quilt. That's the actual point I'm trying to get at for you guys. Now, guys, if you see, here's the fabric. You can see it better right here. If you are feeling excited about making double Colorado or quilting your double Colorado, if you've already pieced it, tap the heart for me over on Facebook. And please also drop your questions in the comments. I'm going to toggle back over to Facebook so that I can see your comments without having to. Sue, I know. Feathers in your sleep. What can I say? I would be all for it. Oh, I love how many of you are. See, Cindy, my only problem is I'm vehemently against dusting, and then I'd have to dust them. So that's like a whole nother. We'll see. My desire for the look of cacti on that table might get the better of me. Love it. So guys, I know there's a little bit of a delay, but do drop those comments or those questions in the comments if you have them. And while you're doing that, I want to go ahead and hit this next slide and just let you know, first of all, the cats say hello. The table runner has been kitty approved, which, you know, I'm here for that. But if you're looking at these and you're like, HollyAnne, I think it would be so much fun to make this summer stash busting quilt top or make any of the summer stash busting quilt tops that we've made so far, or take a top that you've already made and move towards finishing it. And you want to try quilting it yourself. Maybe you've been inspired by the quilting plans I've been sharing, but you don't feel confident. Right? That's the big trouble. Then I want you to start with my free guide. There's a link in the caption of this video, but you'll also find it here at stringandstory.com/FMQ top tips. I'm going to talk to you about tension. I'm going to talk to you about basting. I'm going to talk to you about the value of a quilting plan, which is exactly what I've been showing you here tonight, where we make decisions about what we want to quilt on paper before we actually start the quilting process. So I have a whole free guide for you, chock full of resources and advice and tips so that you can start your free motion quilting journey off on the right foot. And you can go to that link and I will send it straight to your inbox. Okay, now let me see if I missed any questions. I don't see any. Let me bring this on down. Yes, Angela, feathers are my go-to as well. I love them so much. Just feathers on everything. Add all the texture. I'm completely here for it. Now, guys, as we're wrapping up, feel free to still ask your questions if you have them in the comments. But as we're wrapping up, I want to let you know, next week, I'm going to interrupt our regular summer stash busting agenda because I have a collaboration with my friend Emily over at Homemade Emily Jane. Now, Emily and I are both AccuQuilt go-getters. So we work with AccuQuilt. We have AccuQuilts, and we have put together 2 AccuQuilt blocks to make a really cool quilt. So for those of you who have AccuQuilts and who have scraps, I think you're going to find next week particularly inspiring. But even if you don't have an AccuQuilt, these are simple traditional blocks that I think you're going to find to be a lot of fun. So Emily and I wanted to insert that into the middle of summer stash busting because as you're making all these other quilt tops, it just might be that you're getting a bit of a pile of scraps and looking for some ideas of how to turn those scraps into some simple blocks that could then become a really adorable quilt, okay? Now, Trina is asking a great question. Rockstar graduation. So Free Motion Quilting Academy has a graduation coming up on the 8th, I think is correct, of July, and that will be during social hour. So 8 p.m. on the 18th. If you're in Free Motion Quilting Academy and hoping to graduate, then your graduation applications and final project are due on the 15th. Great question, Trina. One more thing before I let you guys go. Don't forget that the Intro to Thread Painting Workshop is open for enrollment. Enrollment is open through Saturday. I'm going to be showing you guys how to do some basic thread painting techniques on another National Parks panel You do not have to have a national parks panel in order to participate, but it's an opportunity for you to learn some foundational skills about how to use free motion quilting and machine quilting in a little bit more of an artistic way. For those of you who have been in Free Motion Quilting Academy with you, it'll feel very natural and applicable. But if you've been working on free motion quilting on your own and you consider yourself to be a reasonably confident beginner, then you would be a great fit for this too. Nothing we're going to be doing is particularly complicated on the quilting front, but we're going to be talking about lights and darks and textures and thread changes, and it's going to be a really fun time. So make sure you check out that workshop. You'll find more information via the link in the caption of this video. Guys, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of our summer stash busting. We have 3 weeks left, counting next week's little bonus edition. And I'm enjoying this so much. It's so much fun to put these quilt tops together with you guys and then just share about some ideas for quilting them. As we move, oh my gosh, Sue, you found 3 panels. Look, you're just ready. You're ready to rock and roll. If you do have a panel that you're excited to quilt along with me next week, go ahead and get it basted and be ready. And you can get started during our workshop, which is so much fun. This has been an absolute blast, guys. It feels so good to be back with you. If you are joining me on Saturday night, do you remember that we are having bingo night inside the Quilting Rockstars on Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern? I will get more information up about that as we get a little bit closer. If you're not yet a member of the Quilting Rockstars, do go request to join so that you can have fun with us on Saturday night. All right, guys, have a wonderful evening. I'll talk to you soon.